Yeah, it was interesting. We were just at the BAI, had like a convention over Monday and Tuesday with a bunch of different brands, brokers, consultants, resources, vendors, and we had like these breakout rooms, and everyone was just talking about the different ways to use AI in their business. And it's just so interesting how like the different perspectives, especially like different generations, how they view AI and how much they want to implement it in their business. So it's just going to be interesting, something to kind of look over with. And I always kind of related to the start of the internet, although I was too young to really remember that. I like watching kind of the videos of kind of like CNBC, Bloomberg, where you have these people saying, they're not going to use the internet like XYZ. And then, here we are today. So it's kind of very similar, I feel like, with AI, where you kind of just need to adapt to the times.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that people learn from from the past, and the people that said that the internet weren't going to be a thing, they're like, oh wait, yeah, okay, I see it now. I see it. So yeah, seems like with AI, if you don't do it, if you don't start to implement it at some point, you're just going to get lost in the shuffle. And that's all there is to it. You have to implement it to stay competitive. And I don't know, we'll see. My only concern is how quickly things move with it. It's just
Yeah.
it moves so fast, way faster than the internet moved, I think. So it'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, to implement it in your business, to make your marketing better, to make your business development better, it just makes everything
Yeah.
better. Your website better, your Q&A sections on websites, things like that, a lot better. And especially for us, like our focus with it is making the franchisees' lives easier, right? So if you can automate certain portions of their process or their day with something like AI, something for simple tasks like answering, commonly asked questions by rental guests, or communicating with property owners, and giving them updates through an AI based software that can really be adaptive. Pretty cool stuff. So again, they're working on their business rather than in their
Yeah.
business. It's always the goal, right? So there's huge in the franchise industry, huge potential. I'd say even just as much potential in the franchise industry as there is anywhere else, for AI to be scaled. So it is exciting.
Yeah, and it's so funny as you mentioned, like how fast it's moving. Like we were just on the meeting that we were talking about, and there's already ChatGPT version 4, and some people don't even know what ChatGPT is, and we're already on the fourth version.
Yeah.
But it's so funny how it's really something that people talked about, I feel like, for the last decade now, and then literally like you snapped your fingers and AI is everywhere, and now we're on version 4. So it really is coming, like you said, fast and furious, and much faster than the internet era, where it was something where you kind of had a couple of years to adapt to the times, whereas AI is like really you're getting hit in the head with, can you adapt to the times? And especially if you're a smaller company, like how quickly is your response time to those people? So yeah, it's very interesting. And this is a very kind of interesting segue into the start of the podcast. Keith and I were just really talking about AI before I hit record, and I figured I just hit record just because this really is such an interesting conversation. It's really interesting to see that franchising is really taking a lead and really making sure that franchise owners are really up to date with the technology, which is really so key. So without further ado, we're going to dive in. We're going to do a brief introduction. So we're on episode 5 of the Conquer the Mind podcast. I'm Josh Dubois of JD Strategic. I'm very excited today to have Keith of iTrip, not iTrip Vacations, on the podcast today. And really, what's so interesting is this wasn't even planned. And last week on LinkedIn, he had a very exciting post on his family was actually a franchise owner of iTrip, and they recently sold their business. So we're going to dive into that throughout the podcast. We're definitely going to kind of get your perspective in terms of the family relationship, family franchising, being actually on a franchise owner side, not just the franchise development side, but really having both those perspectives and how that helps you. So I'm very excited today. Keith comes, like I said, from a family of entrepreneurs, passion for small businesses, family businesses, recently sold their iTrip franchise, which is very exciting. Keith has a very unique opportunity to join the corporate team in a franchise development role. And his goal is really to share all of his experiences and knowledge he gained from working in the franchise for the last 14, 15 years. And now we can really provide those experiences to help you guys out. So I'm very excited. We're going to dive into Keith's background, what is iTrip. So if you're interested, let's really dive into all things franchising, all things mindset, and let's conquer the day, everyone. So I always like to kind of start off with everyone just kind of diving into someone's background. And I think a lot of times there's a lot of injustice kind of diving into someone's background where it's like you kind of have the goal of the podcast. We want to educate people on franchising. We want to help people with mindset, really take control of their future. But a lot of people, especially as a younger entrepreneur, we'll talk about people in corporate America, but a lot of people in, growing up, middle school, high school, college, they have no idea what they want to do in life. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, just figuring out what you want to do in life, what you're passionate about. So I think it's very helpful from someone in your position who has been in franchising, you've seen success, you're in a successful position now, just trying to understand a little bit more about the journey and kind of how you got there. So kind of dive into your background, maybe starting in high school, and don't feel like you need to like give your whole life story right now. Just kind of give a little small piece and then we can kind of start to break it down to where you are today. But when you were kind of in high school, I understand, your family owned a franchise, but what did that kind of look like in high school? How old were you when your family first made that investment? What did things look like when you were growing up? Where did you grow up? What did that look like?
Yeah, so, so it was pretty interesting. So I grew up here in the Nashville, Tennessee area, which is where I'm located again. And so my original goal, what I wanted to do when I was in school, I have always been somewhat career oriented, even younger, started working pretty early, around 14 years old, and have always had a job, always had that focus in the back of my mind. But going all the way back to high school, I really wanted to be an engineer, more specifically a mechanical engineer. Always really loved just the processes around engineering. Always loved the idea of design through engineering as well, and kind of just figuring out how things work. So that was always my goal. And then yeah, in high school, my parents started the franchise. So my dad was the typical franchisee starter or owner. He was corporate America for 25 years. He was in manufacturing and wanted to get out of it, wanted to get away from corporate America. He ended up doing consulting towards the end and then just wanted to do something on his own, but really has always been very entrepreneurial at heart. My grandfather, his dad, very entrepreneurial as well. He did antenna and cable installations way back in the day. So, and my dad helped him with that when he was in high school. So just kind of interesting how it has come full circle. So yeah, I was all set up to do that. I was all set up for engineering. I was in a pre-engineering course in my high school, and then everything kind of changed. My dad kind of planted that seed in my head that, hey, there's this family business. I'm going to scale it. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how we scale it. So I'm going to continue to grow this business. By the time you're ready to join, we're going to have a great business for you to be able to join. It could be your first thing. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, maybe we'll see about it. And then as business continued to grow, as it continued to change, really saw him creating a really cool lifestyle for himself, being able to manage his time, being able to manage really how he's growing the business and who he's working with. Every day was a new day, so he didn't have a monotonous routine of going to the office and the same thing over and over again. It was truly a unique kind of a situation every day, and I saw him loving it. I just saw him really enjoying what he was doing for the first time, really, since that I'd ever seen him with work. So I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then business ownership really started to take a hold, and I got really interested in it. So I was working with the business all through school in a part-time manner. And then once I finished college, I moved down to Orlando, worked down there for about 4.5 years, 5 years with the family business. My primary role was business development. And so I was going out and helping our family business scale. And then we got to a point to where, my parents are getting towards retirement age and kind of getting close to that chapter. I wanted to come back to Nashville, Tennessee. It's always felt like home for me as well. So made that transition back to Nashville, was lucky enough to find a position with the corporate team with iTrip. And now, like you mentioned, I'm able to share those experiences and the knowledge that I gained from working in the business for so many years into the corporate team, and a potential new franchisee candidate. So we did have a successful sale, successfully exited the business, which is another, very exciting thing, big plus for the business. Certainly
Yeah.
a sell business too. So it's been great through and through.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy.
That's awesome, Keith. And you dropped a lot there. So we definitely want to break some of that down for sure. That's really interesting. And it really started off with kind of your engineering background. I think that's really so fascinating, where sometimes people think you need to have that business background. I always kind of ask, nature versus nurture on terms of being an entrepreneur, being a business owner. And really with franchising and really having those systems in place, it allows you to figure out what your strengths are and your weaknesses, and then find the right opportunity for you and really thrive on that. And I think what's so interesting about the engineering background, especially, as a male, when you go into college, it's a lot of people, it's like, are you business? Are you engineering? And if you're female, is it like business or nursing? Or, it's somewhere along those lines, not to stereotype people, but that seemed to be every time when I was a freshman in college, it was like, what do you major in? You could already guess what someone majored in to a certain extent. But like with the engineering, I just think it's very powerful. And something like the IT people, like they have a certain kind of mindset with being able to fix problems. And that's really so crucial in the business world with how do you react when there's a challenge? Do you kind of turn the other way, or is it something you're looking to solve? So I think that's super beneficial. And when you're kind of evaluating opportunities, just thinking about your strengths and weaknesses is very powerful. And you mentioned your family, they were in kind of corporate America for a while. And then can you kind of just describe, was it mother, father that both made the investment into the franchise? Were they both in corporate America? What was kind of the decision process like to find iTrip? And then was it just like sick of corporate America? But you kind of mentioned they always had that entrepreneurial itch through your grandparents as well. So there was kind of always something they considered, or as someone kind of considering if franchising's for them, they've been in corporate America for a while, help them kind of understand that similar mindset.
Yeah, so the way that my dad had always put it was that he always wanted to do something on his own. He was trying to find something, but he was always too much of a chicken to actually get started. He didn't want to he didn't want to make the big jump. I
Yeah.
would never say that about him, but that's what he says. So I'm going to use his words. So that was really it. He just finally got to a point to where he felt like it was the right time. My mom, she was not in corporate America. She did work, but she was not in corporate America. So she helped with the business. She was more along the administrative lines in the business. It was primarily my dad, and of course, being married, it was a combined investment into the business, and they both worked into the business, but it was primarily my dad that was working full-time in the business, and then my mom was part-time. So yeah, it was just a really good time when we started. It was in 2009. So iTrip was founded in 2008. Family business started in 2009, and the business was actually not a franchise at that time. It was a software licensure model, and then
Oh,
it
wow.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. So we transitioned to the franchise model in 2015, and like you mentioned before, my dad, he's got a lot of great skills, and he had some entrepreneurial experience in his life, but it was pretty foreign to him. He had no familiarity with short-term rental properties at all. Never owned a short-term rental property, maybe stayed in one a time or two. And again, this is 2009, so Airbnb is not even a big platform at this point, not the household name that it is now. So he had no experience in that whatsoever. And like you mentioned, the franchise model is the biggest benefit is that it plays on your strengths and it helps your weaknesses, right? In my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
Especially with someone like yourself, and you're helping someone find it from day one. He didn't work with anyone to help him find a franchise when he was looking. He happened to just know the guys that were starting it and got in at the right time, kind of a happenstance kind of thing. But
Yeah.
if you would have worked with someone like yourself that can really help identify those strengths, identify what he's been doing for so long and what he can play on, and then what the weaknesses are that he could really use some support from from the franchise organization, again, that kind of takes there's a lot of, questions early on. Is this the right one for me?
Yeah.
Am I actually a good fit for it? You help answer all those questions for them. So it would have taken all of that kind of headache, all that worry away from them. But either way, again, it turned out to be a fantastic thing for us. So kind
Mhm.
of an interesting start to getting into business anyway.
Yeah, that's super powerful. A lot of things you said, and your words with kind of being the chicken, and not like you're a chicken for not doing a certain thing or doing something a right way. And we kind of talked on the previous episodes on there's not a right way or a wrong way to do things. Everyone just has a certain path. Really, the goal is just whatever makes you happy. We want to help you with that. And on episode 1, Dennis Schooley brought up how 70% of people think about being a business owner, and you and I know it's probably less than 1% probably even explore that option. So we just want to help people make that educated decision. Business ownership may or may not be right for you. Franchising may or may not be right for you, but just allowing you to make that educated decision, I think, is really powerful. And one of the things you kind of brought up is when your family first got involved in iTrip, it wasn't actually a franchise. But today, it's a very explosive franchise with, I think over 100 franchisees at this point. So can you walk us through when you first made that initial decision? What was kind of iTrip like at that point to where it is today? And, talk about how when you first made that decision, or your father and your family did, how, it really wasn't much bigger risk without it really being a franchise to kind of where it is today and having those systems in place, and really how we'll kind of limit that risk level so that if you are considering business ownership, but you don't have that strong risk tolerance, we'll educate you every step of the way so that you can see what that opportunity looks like. So can you kind of just walk us through iTrip from when you made that first decision to if someone has to make that decision today, and kind of how different that is?
Yeah, yeah, really good point. So yeah, starting as a software licensure model. So you've got the software itself, or at least in our case, we had the software itself. We
Hmm.
had the brand that we could build on, which the brand's been through 3 iterations at this point in terms of logos and and whatnot. So that's interesting. It always changes. So you had the software, the logo, and then some processes on going out and what the actual work is that you do, property management in our case. So they had some general guidelines, but there was a lot more learning as you go back in the day versus now, where all the processes have been thought out. There's been best practices that we've been able to implement basically in every corner of the business. Is one of the biggest benefits that the franchise offers. There was zero training when we started either. So again,
Yeah.
it's an emerging business. So things are changing a lot, and nobody really knows a lot about it. So, that's part of it. But now we've got a unbelievable training program. We've got a 2-part training program, one in the market, so in market training, and then we have another software and operational training in Nashville too. So we just didn't have that when we started as a software licensure model, but that's what you get when you
Yeah.
go to the franchise model, and we made that switch. So there's just the level of support is by far and away a lot different. And I think that's really what people were looking for.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And kind of, when someone thinks about if they want to be in business for themselves or think about franchising, it's really just the matter of, you're welcome to do that, but you're going to be kind of out positioned, out resourced. And, my father on, episode 3 really brought up, when you start a business, it's kind of like you put your name on something, but it's like, where are the customers going to come from? What does the market look like? You're really playing a guessing game with everything. And kind of goes back to how we started the conversation with AI. If you're not kind of best in your department in the marketing and the sales, having the best product, having the best employees, everyone needs to be the best in every department, or someone else is going to be fighting to get that position. So I think it's just so powerful in franchising, having that track record of success, evaluating people in similar markets is just so powerful. And as we kind of talk about your family being in franchising, owning an iTrip for 14, 15 years, can you talk about kind of everyone's curious about the lifestyle that franchising gives you? Can you talk about how your father was in corporate America for 20 years, then became a franchise owner? What did that kind of do for the family in terms of the lifestyle? What did life start to look like? Was he working other jobs on top of being a franchise owner, pursuing other passions, other interests? And then what was kind of his transition out of corporate America to a franchise owner?
Yeah. So the transition was really interesting, and it came at a great time. So he was traveling a lot with corporate America. Traveled every single week for a few years prior to making that switch. So he was always gone back on the weekends, and really took a toll on him. So that was his lifestyle. And then you had the stress of being an upper level manager on top of that. And manufacturing is not a stress-free environment by any means. So the stress was starting to pile up a little bit. And it was what he had done for 15-20 years prior to that, just always been in manufacturing. So it was a scary transition, but he ended up taking one year to decide what he wanted to do, and again found the iTrip opportunity, but did not want to do anything additional to that. So he didn't work another job. He's one of those guys that is fully dedicated. So when he jumps into something, he jumps in, both feet in,
Yeah.
and it's 100% his prerogative. And that's really, when it comes to the franchise model, I think that's kind of what most franchisees or franchisors are looking for, is that full-time, someone that's looking to be 100% dedicated. But there's plenty of opportunities out there that don't. He just wanted to be fully in and really work the business, and he was able to grow it and scale it very quickly in the first year.
Mhm.
So he was, had a great level of success by doing that. And I think that's probably the biggest benefit
Yeah.
of being fully dedicated to the franchises, that you can really you can jump in full effort and grow and scale quickly. That's how you're going to get that ROI. That's how you're going to start to really
Yeah.
make some money. So that's how he got into it.
That's powerful. And one of the things I always kind of talk about with candidates as I'm speaking with them is really, what do you want your life to look like in 3 to 5 years? A lot of people, they think if they're in corporate America for 10, 15, 20 years, they can really just throw, some money at something and then it's going to make them $500,000 a year.
Right.
But if that were the case, literally everyone, half this country, everyone in finance at least would be a billionaire. And we know
Yeah.
that's just not the case. So the reality is, if you want to put in just, 6, 12, 24 months of heavy lifting, really ramp up the business, start to put the resources in place so that you can start to live that life you want, it really is a reality, but it's just that you have to put in that legwork in the beginning. So I think it's just a good point of how your father was ready to go all in with the opportunity. Whereas a lot of people where I talk to, they're in corporate America for, especially, for 20 years, you had that heavy 401k, you had those benefits. It is a much bigger risk to kind of take that leap of faith into franchising. You're leaving a lot behind. A lot of people are weighing, what am I making my annual salary this year? How much would I be making this franchise opportunity? But you really have to evaluate when you're in corporate America, you're working for someone else. Every year you're kind of just working for maybe a little bit bigger of a paycheck. And you really never know with an economic cycle. Age discrimination now is pretty bad in corporate America. But having the resources when you don't necessarily have to worry about these in franchising, and you're able to really craft the life you want. And if you want to make more money, put in more work or put more resources in place. But all these operations are so scalable where you can start with a single unit, you can do multi-units, area territories, but you're not limited on income by any means. They look at the demographics, they look at the territory. So you'll have a complete picture of what your financials will look like. You're going to see what the brand looks like. You're going to validate the opportunity. So for anyone that's kind of thinking, oh, my income's maybe tapped in franchising, that really couldn't be further from the case. A lot of times people weigh, I'm making, 150K in corporate America. What's my salary going to look like in franchising? But you have to realize that income in franchising is really untapped. So you can grow that really as much as you want. And that'll be validated as you do speak to other franchise owners. So I think
Yeah.
that's just a very, very powerful statement that what you said. And another thing, as we talk about how your family sold the business, you're not only working for yourself, making whatever you want, putting those resources in place, but you're building up a valuable asset that eventually you can sell and really create these generational wealth opportunities. So can you just talk about the idea of franchising, how, everyone kind of looks at their 401k, but building up a valuable asset that you have control over rather than kind of putting your market a certain percent in the stock market, not necessarily having that control, not sure if financial advisors have your best interests at heart, but really you have control over that asset that you're building over time, and how that kind of, maybe change the family dynamic a little bit. I know for my family personally, and how family really tied such a strong role into me getting involved in franchising and really watching those generational wealth opportunities through franchising. So can you just kind of speak on that aspect, on someone kind of weighing the financials of corporate America to franchising and how you are building that asset?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and like you mentioned, with our family experience, our family is bringing in a great income. I mean, my dad had worked through corporate America and was an upper level manager, so that was certainly a huge concern. When am I going to be able to get back to this level of income? Am I going to be able to get back to this level of income? So that's where our franchise opportunity with iTrip, it's uncapped income potential, and there are 6 uncapped residual or recurring revenue streams as well, which is really interesting and was a huge portion of why we chose the business as well early on, was uncapped income potential. And then again, we made money in our sleep. So bookings would come in at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're still making money, which is pretty unique. But yeah, making that switch and ended up making more money than what my dad was able to do in corporate America, which was really cool. And then yeah, finding an opportunity that is you got a great opportunity for resales, like you mentioned, is another huge opportunity. Now for my parents, getting to retirement and that being a part of their, basically like an annuity or their their retirement program, that's really what they had in mind. So that's exactly what they set out to do, and that's exactly what they were able to do.
Yeah.
A lot of work that's involved with that, but man, what an amazing thing that you're able to do for yourself. Like you mentioned, you're putting 100% of your trust in yourself and your ability to create wealth in a business, and provide a value to somebody else through your business. And
Yeah.
so that's what you're betting on. You're not betting on the S&P. You're not betting
Yeah.
on anything else, somebody else to be able to manage your money to get you good returns. You're betting on yourself to get you good returns. And at least in our experience, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs experience, when they bet on themselves and they really bet hard on themselves, trust in themselves, the ROI is huge. I mean, it's massive, and you're able to take a big payout as the result
Yeah.
of doing so. So huge benefit.
No, that's really powerful. And I think that's just, the thing is the resources, the opportunities there. But I think a lot of people are scared of, actually taking that step, putting in that action. A lot of people, they want the reward, but are you willing to put in the risk? Or, we're going to help you validate that risk, but are you willing to actually put in some of that heavy work up front? And that's really the big question mark, I feel like, with trying to weigh the financials. Because overall, especially in corporate America, people have families. Really, number one is being able to provide for your family. So always being able to figure out what that job transition looks like. So that's why the process is so powerful, where you're going to be able to speak to other franchise owners like Keith's family that were in the system, that can literally validate the opportunity, tell you, how much money they're making, how long it took, what that transition from corporate America looked like. Because we very much understand that there's a risk in this process. It's not easy to be a business owner. If it were, everyone would be doing it and reaping all the benefits of it. But really, if you're willing to just make that call, we can walk you through that step-by-step process so that you can see what the opportunity looks like. And we'll really emphasize how it really is an education process in franchising. And it really is powerful how they are looking to just award those territories. So now I think we've got a really good idea of, your family background and kind of you getting into iTrip vacations, or iTrip now. But can you walk us through, so you're a franchise developer, can you walk us through exactly what does iTrip do? How are franchise owners deriving revenue? What is a franchise owner doing? We know it's kind of like short-term property management, but for someone that may not even know, a lot of people are interested in real estate. I always kind of make the joke, everyone wants to get rich in, real estate, crypto, finance, because that's where the money's at, but it's just a lack of putting in action to make it happen. So kind of tying back into franchising, if you want to take that action, the financials, the lifestyle, the impact, they're all there for you. It's just if you're willing to take that leap of faith. So can you walk us through what iTrip Vacations does for a franchise owner, what they do for their clients, their customers, and really just the overall, what does iTrip do? And then we'll really dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So two parts to that. The franchisees, what a iTrip franchisee does is they are a short-term rental property manager. And so we work with property owners. So we don't own the actual individual properties themselves. We work with property owners to be able to provide full service management, meaning that we advertise their property for rentals through sites like Airbnb and Vrbo. So we're not competitors with sites like Airbnb or Vrbo. We're actually partners with those companies on about 80 different national and international listing sites to be able to attract guests from the United States and around the world. So we get the rental guest in the property. We handle any sort of need that the guest needs while they're in the property, before, during, or after their stay. So if they need someone to talk to, they call the franchisee and they're able to get questions answered or issues resolved. Then we manage the turnover process as well for the property owner. So we send the cleaners out and work with those vendors, those local vendors for the property, to be able to clean the property, maintain the property. So homeowner, they sit back and they just look at their owner portal. They collect rental checks from our franchisees, but they have zero burden of day-to-day rentals and management. So that's what our franchisees are solving. They're able to do a number of really amazing things, like generate higher rental revenue for those property owners versus if they were going to do that themselves as well. So another fantastic benefit. We're able to take better care of the property, and we're able to provide a better guest experience through our processes, through our system, and through our technology too. So again, 30,000-foot look. I'm of course always happy to explain how we do that in further detail. But in terms of what iTrip does for the franchisees, iTrip provides, again, those processes and the platform. So like we mentioned before, we started as a software licensure model. We started with our proprietary software, and we built that from the ground up. We actually have some of the same team members as far as software development goes. Our primary software developer has been there since day one and continues to work on our platform, and our proprietary software continues to grow and adapt it to our franchisees' needs. So we provide the platform, we provide the software, the training, the tools, and then we've got economies of scale to be able to provide some really amazing tools and technology for our franchisees, so that they can spend less time working in their business and they can focus on working on the business and really scaling the business, growing a great business. So that's been very cool to witness that over time as well. Those tools continue to be added and updated as the industry changes.
Yeah, you said some powerful things there. One, in franchising, some of the big words are systems. Can you follow the system and really you'll be able to succeed? I just think it's just so powerful, and just being able to weigh those options and having those systems in place. And you mentioned earlier when you first started, when the family first started with iTrip, and how it was just a business and now it's a franchise, and now they've adapted through those processes, those systems. Whereas if you're trying to be a business owner yourself, first of all, you're trying to figure it all out by yourself, trying to weigh out that market. But as in a franchise, they've already evaluated your market. They've gone through these troubles that you're going to take years to go through, and they have the team by their side to really give you these systems, the support in place. They're going to help you look at the real estate selection, look at the territory, know who you're marketing for. So these are all just very powerful things. And just diving back into iTrip, for someone just no idea what property management is. So you have someone, they have a property, and then they're looking to rent that out to short-term people. Do they need to find the people that have the properties that are looking to short-term rent? Are they just helping them find the short-term rentals, or are they also responsible for finding the properties, or what's that relationship look like?
Yeah, so franchisees are primarily responsible for going and scaling their business. We scale through finding new property owners and adding more properties to our management portfolios. So that's primarily the franchisee's responsibility to do that. Of course, we've got about 20 different strategies on how we go do that, and the
Yeah.
again, like you mentioned, the processes to be able to do that. And then we've also got some really unique, really cool technologies and softwares that we're able to kind of scale that, find more property owners and reach out to them more quickly, have more effective conversion ratios to those property owners as well, so that we're reaching out to property owners less and getting more
Yeah.
property owners on board. So that is primarily the franchisee's responsibility. But like I mentioned, the iTrip booking engine, really where we're getting all of our bookings, that is primarily the franchisor's responsibility, is putting that booking platform together. So again, a franchisee, when they're making their sales, they're not fighting for every single booking. They're not having to sell necessarily every single booking. Again, they're more
Yeah.
so focusing on scaling, growing their business through those property owners. But it's a great opportunity to scale a
Yeah.
business through capital that's already been invested by property owners, meaning that most of our franchisees, they don't actually own any short-term rental properties themselves. So they're leveraging those properties that have already been purchased by property owners and working with them.
Okay, interesting. And is there the option to build up a real estate portfolio, or is it the focus on short term? Are there kind of like multiple different options for a franchise owner? Or can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so they can build a rental portfolio themselves if they would like to, if they want to, buy properties in their market as well and throw them in the short-term rental management portfolio. Yes, they can absolutely do that, build wealth that way through owning real estate. We don't do any other sort of rentals, so we're only short-term rental property management, and we do that kind of pretty strategically because we know that there's long-term management out there, and could we add that to our platform? Yeah, we probably could, but what we really want to do is we want to focus on one thing, and we want to be the absolute best at it. And
Mhm.
so that is what we choose to do with short-term rentals. We want to be the absolute best, and in my opinion, we are the absolute best in providing that short-term rental management portfolio. We have the best technology and the best partnerships as well to be able to
Yeah.
serve the short-term rental properties. So that's really what we focused on. And again, like we were talking about with, my dad jumping in full, 2 feet into that business, iTrip is 2 feet into short-term rentals. So that's really where
Yeah.
we want to keep our focus.
No, that's powerful. And it kind of just reminds you of the idea of if you try to be the best at everything, you end up just being average at everything. So a lot of people, they want to be the best at everything because they kind of like the NFTs, the crypto, the real estate. I want to be the best at everything and make the most money with everything. But if you find your niche, like one of the previous episodes with Mosquito Squad, people don't think of mosquitoes as somewhere where I can make any money.
Yeah.
But it's finding that niche that has that value, that service that people continually need. And, we could probably dive into the demographics on the 5 to 10 year trends on short-term property owners. And we've seen that play out tremendously over the last couple of years. And that trend is not going away with fewer and fewer people owning homes, more and more people with short-term property rentals. And there's various reasons, but people, during COVID, they want to travel, they want to go to different places. People aren't necessarily, working for one person for 40 years of their life. People are trying out new things. So it's just becoming more and more of a trend, let alone people having the financials to own a home. So maybe that would be a good kind of thing to dive into, just the demographics of short-term property rentals as kind of one of the things as I talk with candidates, just making sure franchises, they're not a fad, they had that long-term track record, there's something that's sustainable, something that, would my mother, my sister, my father, would someone I know use that product or service? Would they use it continuously? And clearly, as your family owned the business for 15 years, starting from literally as a business to a franchise, it really does show that it's not a fad. It does have that long-term track record. But can you kind of walk us through where those trends are looking over the next couple of years and how someone may be interested in real estate could see iTrip as a good opportunity?
Absolutely. Yeah. So really good point. I'm glad that you brought that up because, when we did start, 2008, 2009, like I mentioned, Airbnb was not that household name that it is
Yeah.
now. And short-term rentals, or they were called, vacation rentals back in the day, or alternative accommodations is what a lot of people would call them as well. That was just the way that you looked at it. You had a hotel, or you could do this kind of cool new thing every once in a while. That was this vacation rental or alternative accommodation. And then we saw as this concept continued to gain traction, get speed and get more speed, that it really was becoming mainstream. And it absolutely has become mainstream. It's growing into a big industry, and there's a lot of short-term rental properties out there that people have, again, found this opportunity and wanted to get a little piece of the pie. We're
Yeah.
starting to see things too in the hotel industry is really acknowledging how much of an industry the short-term rental I guess short-term rental industry is overall. They're trying to get a piece of the pie as well. So they see that they're losing business, they're losing customers,
Yeah.
renters from hotels to short-term rentals. So now they're jumping in. One of our partners actually is Marriott Homes and Villas, and we partner with them strategically for bookings. And so we're able to advertise our qualified properties on the Marriott Homes and Villas sites, and their Bonvoy members, which there's about 153 million Bonvoy members internationally, which is a group of people that, Marriott's been working on for a long time to build this Bonvoy program. So they can use those Bonvoy points to either book a Marriott hotel or a short-term rental for their partners in the short-term rental industry. We're
Huh.
seeing Hilton start to jump into that game as well now. So
Yeah.
the signs are all over saying that this is a established industry now and is going to continue to grow, and that is exactly what we
Yeah.
expect to see as well.
I love it. Like, I feel like we keep having breaking news on the podcast. Like, that's huge news right there. And, also one of the things you brought up earlier with how franchise owners don't have to sell as much to clients, and having that brand recognition, having those systems in place, having that marketing support. Those are two really big things that I hear with everyone that I speak to is, do I have to sell? Because a lot of people, they come from corporate America, they want to start a business, they want the clients, but they don't want to have to sell to get the clients. So having those systems in place where it's not really a sell, it's just, this is my good or service, this is really how I can help. And then having the marketing plan where you can just execute that strategy, not having figure out all these different ways to sell and find your customers and XYZ. And another really good point, as you talk about these new national relationships with hotels, that is a huge thing that I hear with people is, what kind of national relationships do they have in place? And that's another big thing with, do I want to start my own business? Do I want to franchise? Having national relationships in place are just so powerful. And we really saw that play out over COVID, where you see all the mom and pops, all the small businesses, and it really is unfortunate, but a lot of them went out of business during that time. A lot of small businesses, and it's just because you don't have those resources in place. And, if you don't have that strong track record, when it is a tough economic cycle, which I hear from a lot of people right now, it becomes tougher and tougher with one of those newer kind of emerging businesses, where something with the well-established, having those track record in place. So I think those are really two really big points that I wanted to highlight. But kind of just shifting back into the short-term property management industry, your family, you were a franchise owner for a couple of years. What was kind of the typical challenges that you guys faced as franchise owners, and how has that kind of like changed out over the years? Because I'm sure you started off, there was probably a lot more challenges to, as a franchise owner starting off today. Does that look a little bit differently? What's kind of the onboarding process look like now to kind of weave your way out of some of those challenges?
Yeah, for sure. It's changed. It's changed so much. It's changed so much. So technology has really been a big portion of it. And data has become so much more important now than it was really in 2008, 2009. Now, don't get me wrong. Everyone still knew data was very important in
Yeah.
2008, 2009, but to get that data was very difficult back then for at least our industry. So there wasn't really a great standardization when it came to that. So that has probably been one of the biggest things. If I could highlight, it just briefly is in terms of, if I had to choose something, I should say, has been that technology integration and revenue management being a big portion of this business. So when we started our business, the way that we would have to do pricing for properties is go out, find similar properties or similar property listings online, see what they're being rented for, and then see, kind of adapt those prices to our properties that we're managing, so that we could try to be, within market or around the market. So we had to do that for multiple properties. We'd have to find multiple comparable properties, put it together in a spreadsheet, put the averages together, and then try to adapt it to our properties just based on our own intuition. Now there is so many tools that iTrip provides as far as revenue management goes, with dynamic pricing in place so that it adjusts rates on a daily basis, revenue management tools so that you can automatically pull in those comparable properties and you can see what the market's doing, and then data for comparable properties across the board, across the United States, actually. So
Oh,
we're able to see exactly what markets are doing. We're able to see a lot more data so that our franchisees can be much quicker when it comes to making those changes in their
yeah.
nightly rates and revenue management, but then also smarter and way more strategic. So that is one way that you look for ways to increase your revenue and increase your profitability with your business as you go on.
Yeah.
And initially it was, scale, 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 grow a big business. Well, then, revenue management got a lot better, and you could focus on revenue management to really increase your revenue, to yourself, to your franchisee, as well to our property owners. So a huge benefit that we provide there, but that has probably been one of the biggest changes that we've seen since back in the day, 2008.
Yeah, that's fascinating and really interesting for someone kind of considering different opportunities, just looking at the track record and the history of the franchise and the developments and the systems and how they've improved, and being able to validate that with the franchise owner and how powerful those systems were. So I think that's a really good point. And I know our hour is starting to wrap up, and I really still have a bunch of other questions as you kind of keep speaking. A lot of new things are coming up, but one thing that I definitely wanted to highlight that you mentioned as you talked about iTrip, and I think a lot of people would kind of be curious. You mentioned the Airbnb, the Verbo relationship. So can you talk us through that relationship? Because I'm sure a lot of people, they're wondering, there's a lot of short-term property managers, why iTrip vacation, or why iTrip, and how does that relationship work? Am I competing with all these other, big guys out there? Or what does that relationship look like? And how does someone necessarily find iTrip online, or what does that look like?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's a big question. So I'll do my best to break it down. So high level, the way that it works is that, again, iTrip is not in competition with these other booking sites. So the Airbnb, Verbo, Booking.com, Expedia, TripAdvisor, all these big names, Google, they're
Yeah,
all partners of ours. So iTrip, what they've done at the corporate level has been able to go out, establish strategic partnerships with all of these different companies, and then create a platform that communicates with all these different companies as well, and sends information back and forth to these different companies, so that franchisees, number one, they don't have to manage those different relationships. They don't have to manage the communication between those different platforms as well. The franchisees, they're working in one location, which is the iTrip proprietary software. And then that
yeah,
software is able to update all of those different sites. So there's no chance for a double booking with things like that. And iTrip has done a really good job creating those strategic partnerships. We actually have the largest property advertising platform in the industry as well. So our franchisees, a huge competitive edge that they have is when they enter into a market, even with zero properties under management, they're brand new, they can confidently approach a property owner and say that we can advertise your property on more listing sites to be able to get you more bookings than any of
oh,
our competitors. So huge competitive edge. But then we also do a lot of work when it comes to direct bookings. Like you mentioned, I've never seen iTrip online to book a short-term rental property. And that's probably for good reason, because if you did find us in the mix of, the likes of Airbnb, Verbo, Expedia, these massive publicly traded companies, we're
yeah.
probably spending our marketing dollars wrong if we're trying to compete on the same platforms as they are. So we try to
Oh,
be much more strategic when it comes to our marketing, rather than trying to, compete with those companies and the advertising dollars that they're throwing out. So like we mentioned, we're doing a lot of social media, search engine marketing, remarketing as well to our guests, and we're able to achieve about a 30% direct book rate to the iTrip platform as a result of the additional marketing that we're doing for our franchisees. So again, trying to be very, very specific, very particular on how we actually do that marketing is one way, and implementing AI, back to the AI conversation, implementing AI so that we can have better conversion rates and have a lower cost per conversion when it comes to those direct bookings too. That's our strategy.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And kind of that's what I was thinking with Airbnb, Verbo, I would say if you're not like first three on those Google results, you're really in the graveyard, let alone if you're on the second page, you're really in the graveyard at that point. So trying to figure out, where you get your customers, where you get your clients. And that's kind of two more questions as we kind of end this up. As someone, they become a franchise owner, what is this, how long is the ramp up process? Because I understand, it's a Wi-Fi business, it's an internet business, you're making Wi-Fi money, no employees, no overhead. So what does it look like to get started? And then obviously at that point they're like, where do I make my money, where do I find my customers? Can you talk about how you help with real estate selection, and are you looking at the market, and how do they figure out where to get those customers?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, like you mentioned, we're a home-based business opportunity. We look for local owner operators. So we really become pillars of our community, businesses of our community, and we understand the local market very well, being a local franchisee, which is really, really unique. So
Hmm.
the way that the franchisees, they're getting started and ramp up time can really vary. So it's a tough question to answer, because it depends on how much effort you want to put into the business, how quickly you really want to grow, so on and so forth. So like, my family, for example, we grew very quickly, and a lot of effort into that first year to really grow as quickly as possible. Other folks, they may want to take things a little bit slower, but we always set a stretch goal for our new franchisees to hit 30 properties in their first year. But that's how you're growing, that's how you're scaling, and that's how you're getting started with the business, is that growing that real estate portfolio of properties that you manage. So again, there's 20 plus different strategies that we implement. I could take another hour just talking about those different strategies that we have, but we certainly help franchisees identify great areas to get started, where these are kind of hotspots. These are hubs of short-term rental properties. This is where we should focus. These are the strategies and ways that we reach out to the property owners. Again, here is the unique benefit that we're providing. We're able to offer a very unique, very great service to those property owners. And then, hey, let's get started as a new franchisee. Let's start reaching out to these property owners. Let's start being a resource to the community, so that we can start to get some of these property referrals in as well. So again, it can go pretty deep there, but I'll just leave it there
Yeah.
for now.
No, that's super helpful. And I think we'll have to do a second podcast and we'll really dive into that and answer my other 100 questions as we
For
dive into
sure.
this. But this was really helpful. I think the viewers definitely learned a lot. I think one final question for people, as I think your perspective as someone that was in the business for 15 years, part of iTrip, really watched kind of the family dynamic change, and really having that corporate America perspective is so helpful for a lot of people out there. So as you kind of evaluate your family's journey over the years, what were kind of some of the lessons learned over the time there? And what do you kind of tell someone evaluating whether I want to take that risk out of corporate America to become a franchise owner? And I know you dived into already, the financial, the lifestyle benefits, but, just kind of dive into, I think for both of us, just how franchising really is a family environment. And once one person's family members in franchising, every generation after that is in franchising. It seems like anyone you talk to, if they fall into franchising, and then everyone around them also ends up in franchising, because once you realize the opportunity in franchising, I just think it becomes so powerful, where everyone's kind of going through the motions of their 9 to 5. And a lot of people just want to live life on their own terms. And sometimes they may think, like, for example, the last two, mosquito squad, dry cleaning, they look at the industry and they say, that's not a sexy industry. With iTrip, we actually do have a sexy industry, and it's franchising, but just the opportunity in franchising, with it doesn't matter if it's a sexy industry and not sexy industry, the opportunity is there for you to really change your generational wealth, the financial aspects, the lifestyle freedom, go to your kids' sports games, take them on vacation, not have to clock into a 9 to 5 every single day, and really
Mhm.
just have that impact on other people, because all these franchises have found a way to provide a value to the other service, which is why it's so profitable. Rather than, when you're in corporate America, usually you end up kind of as just a certain number, a statistic to a certain extent. And it's not saying there's a right way, a wrong way, but if you are someone, you feel like you want to make the difference, you feel like you've kind of got lost in the motions, you're trying to find that difference, you want to change things up for your family, franchising is definitely a really solid opportunity to at least explore. So can you just walk us through, as your family, the family dynamic kind of changed as it did with my family? And I think it's just so powerful, and something I think a lot of viewers will kind of take that out of today's podcast. But can you just talk about franchising overall? You became a franchise development manager for a reason. It's something you're passionate about. So can you talk to us through, what it does franchising kind of mean for you overall, and kind of what it did for your family? And, hopefully maybe the next generation of your family will be in franchising too, just like mine.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. The change was unbelievable. It was great. Like you mentioned, that lifestyle really starts to open up. You're not in the confines of an office. You're not in the confines of a 9 to 5, having to be somewhere else. So being able to do things together as a family, and go to those different events, and have that, that life that you really want to live,
Yeah.
is definitely possible. And so that's certainly what we were able to do. Our family worked really, really well together, so it was an absolute blessing for us. It made our family dynamic even more dynamic, actually. So just we're good about separating work from lifestyle, but at the same time too, if it mixed, we were happy with what we did. So it didn't really feel like we were talking about work. It was just,
Yeah.
yet another thing that we talked about, and yet another topic of conversation. And the conversation never stopped, and it was just day after day. What a great experience to be able to have an excuse to talk to your family on a daily basis, and you get to catch up, and then you get to talk a little shop at the same time. So that was really cool. iTrip too. I mean, like you mentioned, their families and franchising is kind of a repeated story over and over
Yeah.
again. You see it so often, which is so cool. About 40% of our franchisees are either family businesses or husband-wife businesses. So, some sort of a family business as well, which is really, really unique.
Yeah.
Really cool to be able to have that, and the fact that I could share that with so many people within the same organization as well is so unique. But you mentioned, how would you summarize it, or what would you be able to say to someone that's considering it? And honestly, a lot of times it seems like it just comes down to trusting yourself first, trusting yourself to make that switch to the franchise opportunity, and to pursue a franchise business for yourself if you're considering it. I think a lot of people don't have the confidence in themselves after working a corporate job and kind of following the process of a corporate job for so long. I don't know if they have the confidence in themselves, but the ones that do, they take it and they run. And then also having confidence in the process and the brand that you're going with, the franchise that you're going with,
Yeah.
especially ones that have been established, they've been around for a long time. There's a reason that those processes have been put in place, just like you've got with your corporate job or W-2 job. There's a reason that those processes have been established. So trusting yourself, and then, this isn't a worn out statement, but it is very true. You've got to trust the process. And if you do that, you're going to hit your goals. You're going to smash your goals if you really put in the time and the effort with the franchise model. So, if it's something that you consider, do it. Jump all in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's a really powerful point to really end with, and just the power of family and franchising, and how the opportunity is there. And it kind of reminds me when I first started my role after graduating from college in corporate America. And, starting off in college, you're making a little bit of money. It's exciting for the first couple weeks, the first couple months. You talk to people, they ask you what you're doing. You say, I literally told people, I love my job. It's awesome. And I literally watch people in their 50s, 40s laugh in my face at the idea of enjoying my job. And
Mm.
that really kind of resonated with me, where, if you're going to live your life doing something for probably 40 years, you should be passionate about doing that. You should want to wake up in the morning, and I think it's just this idea of franchising, just the idea of being able to at least explore that opportunity, because it goes back, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. But I do know for a fact, most people are kind of just going through the motions. There's a percentage of, it's like 97% of people don't really know their why. And, it's tough to go through life when you don't really know your purpose. You're kind of just going through the motions. So really my purpose is really to help other people take those next steps and just explore those opportunities so that they can take control of their future, and at least understand what that opportunity looks like, so that you can feel confident whether you do want to stay in that 9 to 5 role, or maybe you do want to start your own business. Whatever it is you want to do, just the idea that certain things, your environment, your community, X doesn't really determine Y. It really is whatever you want to make of this life, you can make it happen. So Keith, I really appreciate your time today on episode 5 of the Conquer the Mind podcast. If you made it through the full hour, definitely subscribe, like, comment, help out the algorithm a little bit. Keith, we're definitely going to have you back on and really dive more into iTrip. But I think the viewers learned a lot today, and your perspective was a very interesting perspective to have that I think the viewers will definitely benefit a lot from. So thank you so much for your time today, Keith.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I would be honored to be on another one, but yeah, it was great. I really appreciate it as well. Appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good deal.